What's up, everyone? Pastor Chad here. Welcome to another episode of the Inside Out podcast. This podcast is here to help you grow in your relationship with the Lord by helping you grow in your knowledge of His Word. And today I'm super excited. We're going to do something a little different. Obviously, I have with me, like I do on most podcasts, Pastor Stan the Man.
Woo-hoo,
What's up, Stan?
baby.
How are you?
This is good.
Good to have you back.
Yeah.
We're going to do something different today, though, Stan,
Yes,
because
that's
we're
awesome.
gonna get a little nerdy. Okay, we're going to talk about science.
Whoa.
Yes, I know that. That's a good thing, though.
Yeah.
That's a good thing. I take nerds as that's a compliment. I wish I was more nerdy, but I am not. That's a smart person. So,
Yes.
but we're going to do something a little different. We're going to talk about science today.
Mm-hmm.
Stan, talk about science. And I don't know about you, but science was my worst class in school. Oh yeah, I was terrible in science. I did not enjoy it. I'm not going to lie. Didn't enjoy it, and I struggled. So I was like, if we're going to talk about science, I am not the guy to be like, let's talk about this. So
I'm surprised.
And I'm just true. I mean, I'm interested, I'm fascinated, but when I was a kid, like it was not my thing. So we wanted to bring in the professionals.
That's it. We brought the big guns.
We brought the big guns in today. So we have with us Jason Neal. Jason, how you doing?
Hey, doing great.
Glad you could
Fabulous.
join us.
Thank you.
Jason
Looking forward to this. This is fun.
is a retired teacher at Greenville High School.
Yep.
And now you said you're an associate pastor now? Is that what you're doing now? Awesome. But you obviously have a background in chemistry, physics, all that stuff.
Yep.
So before we get into it, why don't you kind of share with everyone kind of your kind of backstory and your knowledge of this, which is far greater than my knowledge. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, well, ironically, if you were to tell me that I would be a high school science teacher when I was in high school, I'd be like, no way.
Right.
Because like you, science, especially chemistry, was probably my hardest class.
Oh, yeah.
And my students were always surprised to hear that. It was just very difficult. I was raised in a Christian home and became a Christian when I was like 6. Okay. And was baptized when I was 8 or 9. And but when you're a little kid, your faith doesn't really. I mean, you don't really know what you're doing.
Right.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Right.
And so it really wasn't until college where I really devoted my life to Jesus, like 100% wholesale.
Right.
And ironically, I was going to college trying to make the most money possible, have a major an engineer actually, where I could just make money. Mm-hmm. And I really felt like I needed to switch that up to interact with. I really just felt a passion for students, reaching students for Jesus. And so I looked at my coursework. I'm like, well, I've had chemistry and physics already in engineering, and it wasn't so bad. It wasn't as bad as I remember. And so then I went into science, and it just built. And so, that's a brief snapshot of kind of how I came to be both a Christian and a chemistry and physics guy from the University of Michigan.
University of Michigan, go blue! Woo! That's why you're so brilliant.
This is good.
That's why you're so brilliant.
This is so good.
Representing.
So good.
Awesome. I love that. And so so then you ended up majoring in?
My major is chemistry and my minor is physics.
Okay.
And went into teaching so that, I love science now. It became a passion for me.
Yeah.
I went from struggling high school chemistry student to I got the Honors Scholar Award the year I graduated from the U of M.
Nice.
In the Department of Chemistry.
Oh, wow.
And so,
very cool.
Anyway, along the way, even in high school, I went to a Christian school and we had to take Bible classes. And part of the Bible class was defending the faith. And reasons why, like from science and different things like that, why we have good scientific reasons for faith. And so that kind of stuck with me as and so then, had various challenges in college because I went to a secular university.
Right.
And so faith and science sort of collided in a few ways in college. And so studying that out and really wrestling with some things was, I guess you'd say, a lot of fun.
Was it challenging though? I mean, you got to think you're a young Christian man in college, going to a huge university, because Michigan's no joke of a university. Yeah. And those two worlds colliding at the same time, that's got to be challenging in the heart and mind.
Well, from day one, freshman composition class, I remember we had to write a persuasive essay. And we had to turn in our topics one class period, and then the next class period we would get approval from the professor, right? So my topic was essentially that God created the world,
right,
and not just chance and evolution. I turned in my topic one day, right? Next class period, the professor says, "Hey, Jason, can you stay after?" I'm like, "Sure."
I'm in trouble for sure.
And she said, "Hey, you can't write a persuasive essay on this topic."
Oh, wow.
I'm like, "What? Why not?"
Right.
She's like, "Well, because it's impossible to be persuasive about this topic.
No way.
You have to argue a point and be persuasive." I said,
Yeah.
"Oh, I think I could. I think I really could." And she said, "Well, I mean, if you're not going to change your topic, I just need to warn you that if you write this paper and I don't find it persuasive, you'll fail."
Oh, wow.
So what does the guy do?
Yeah.
He goes ahead and writes the paper.
Absolutely.
I'm like
challenge.
Yeah, so
Exactly.
I
love
and so I wrote the paper, turned it in, and got an A.
No way.
Oh, that's awesome.
Now,
Come on, that's awesome.
Yeah, it was a blast. She did not. She said, "Hey, I still believe the way I believe,
Right.
but you did have some persuasive arguments after all."
Yeah.
And so she passed me based on that paper. So,
Wow.
that's freshman year, right?
That's
day
how
one.
you get it going, man. That's
Listen,
awesome.
and that's why you're here.
Yes.
Because you know your stuff clearly. And so I love that. So basically, I was telling Stan how this was the easiest podcast for me to prepare for, because I'm like, this is not my area of expertise. I'm just like, I'm going to ask questions and let you talk.
Yeah,
because
we're ready to learn
We're
today,
ready to
so.
learn. But
Yeah.
Fabulous.
it's awesome. But I think one question I had, because I think it's kind of interesting, is in your experience, because when I look at the world and we talk about scientists and physicists, I feel like it seems like they're all nobody's a Christian is the way it comes across. I'm like, is there any scientists out there except for maybe a couple that are Christians? So I guess in your perspective and where you come from, do you find that most scientists are Christians or not? Is there a balance? Is it equal? What do you find in your field in that?
Well, I think if you look historically, Copernicus in the late 1400s, early 1500s. You got Galileo in the late 1500s, early 1600s. You've got Kepler, 1500s, 1600s. You got Robert Boyle, late 1600s. You got Isaac Newton.
Yep.
Even Michael Faraday. You got James Maxwell, Louis Pasteur. Anybody who enjoys pasteurized milk or anything like
do
that.
enjoy
pasteurized
milk.
He was the late 1800s. So you got all these people. All these people I just named were scientists who laid foundational work in their field, who also believed in God. Right. So you have something that happens in the late 1700s, early 1800s, a shift in philosophical thinking. And Darwin, of course, came around and he published his work in the 1859 is when Origin of the Species was published. And so kind of since those early 1800s and through, yes, many scientists leaned toward a more of a atheistic perspective. In fact, science became redefined. All these older scientists I mentioned to you, it was more like they were investigating, trying to find out how God did what he did.
Right.
And in fact, you could even argue that where was the scientific revolution? Where did it happen in the 1500s and 1600s? Christian nations is where it happened.
Right.
It didn't happen in Africa or Buddhist nations like China. No, they invented gunpowder. I'm not saying nobody was doing anything interesting. But the Christian belief, in fact, in 1277, there was a bishop of Paris that issued an edict that says, no, creation comes from a mind. And out of that philosophy comes from, hey, the same mind that made the universe made our minds. It must be intelligible. And that prompted science to even start. And so, you look at Isaac Newton, father of classical physics, and he also said that the idea of atheism is so, his words were odious to mankind, that there in all of human history have never been very many atheists. And he was absolutely correct. He wrote more theology than he did science. He wrote more about the Bible and Christianity than it. So, but there was a shift, right? Since before Darwin and then through Darwin's time, so that yes, in the 1900s especially, a lot of scientists, most scientists would identify themselves as atheists. They had Darwin's theory provided a nice explanation of, and science was redefined. Instead of trying to find out how God did what he did, it's we're going to define science. Now the very definition of science is restricted to natural processes only. We must get naturalistic explanations.
And there's where the conflict is between Christianity and science, is that definition right there.
And it changed in late 1700s, early 1800s, and Darwin built on that and things. So, yes, now I would say right now, more scientists would tend to be atheistic or agnostic, for sure. However, since Darwin, technology has advanced quite a bit.
Right.
Darwin's concept of what a cell even is was like a blob. I think he might have known about a nucleus, and that's it.
Right.
It's a lot more advanced.
A lot more advanced now.
Yeah.
And so now, as we can decipher DNA and some of the other evidences from physics, there's a little bit of a shift going on. In fact, Pew Research did a survey, I think it's within the last 10, 15 years, of scientists. And older scientists, in their 60s, older scientists are more likely to be atheists, but younger scientists that have not been indoctrinated into the atheistic thinking,
that
are more likely to look at the raw data without biases.
Right.
They are less likely than the 60-year-old scientists.
Oh, no way.
So like a 30-year-old scientist, the percentage of them that believe in God or some sort of intelligence, some sort of, is higher than the 60-year-old scientist.
Isn't that fascinating?
I'm not saying, I don't want to imply it's a majority yet.
Right.
But where will it be in 10, 20, 30, 40 years?
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, it's very
interesting.
cool.
That's very cool. Awesome.
Think about that for a second, just so you can look back in history and see people pivoting from one way or another because of something that's been introduced. And now we have a little bit of a different swing as the younger physicists and chemists are coming through to see something differently. You're right, in 10 years, where will we be? Interesting. Yeah. So is there tension? So you live in this world. You live in this tension world of the old, we'll take the older scientists and maybe been indoctrinated with the Darwin theory, but then you've seen the rapid increase in technology. And so you've had to mesh both of these worlds together, and plus your faith. Doesn't that add a little bit of tension even in your own heart, or do you even having to work through that, or not so much tension there?
I look at the science. See, what does faith even mean? Faith means to be convinced and persuaded by something. Okay, so there is a basis for faith. The way the world uses faith, like, leap of faith. I don't have a good reason for it. No, I have great reasons to believe what I believe.
Right.
And so right now, I don't feel much tension at all.
That's awesome.
Between faith and science.
Yeah.
The more I learn about science, the more I'm like, this is amazing, because it confirms my faith. So,
absolutely.
Are there some... there's always going to be a few outlying things that I don't understand yet, but by and large, I don't feel hardly any tension at all between my faith and scientific discovery or research.
Yeah, because I feel like it's like you see these people that's like you either believe in science or you believe in God. Like
they want a hard line.
It's like the movie. It's like Nacho Libre. If you ever watched that movie, right? The one buddy's always like, "Why do you get mad at me just because I believe in science and like not God?" It's like why? Why is it one of the like? Why do you think people have that stance of like, well, you either gotta believe in science or you believe in God? Like,
right. Well, see, Fred Hoyle, you can look him up. He's dead now, but he in the 1900s, in fact, Fred Hoyle is the guy who coined the term Big Bang.
Okay.
And on the radio, I think he coined that term in maybe 1949. I can't remember, but in 1981. Okay, now he's not a Christian, doesn't believe in God, but he knows something had to be going on. This is what Fred Hoyle said. In 1981, so this is not new stuff. He said, it does appear, if you look at the universe, it does appear that a super intellect is what he called it. A super intellect has monkeyed with physics.
Monkeyed.
And chemistry and biology. And he says the findings put that conclusion almost beyond question.
That's awesome.
Now, he never, he died years after that. I don't have any... I don't know if he ever became a Christian, but he, for some, and I'm sure we'll get into some of the evidence why he concluded that in 1981. And Charles Towns, he's the inventor of the laser. I think he taught at UC Berkeley. Not a slouch, Nobel Prize winning physicist.
Wow.
Also, concludes that boy, this universe is so fine-tuned. There are so many things about this universe that a super intellect behind it.
Right.
And so that's what even some of the more scientists are seeing, that there does seem to be some sort of intellect behind things. Not all of them. I'm not saying even a majority yet.
Right.
But certainly a shift that you wouldn't have seen 100 years earlier.
Yeah. And I think it's just important to know that you don't have to believe in one or the other. Like that's that's what we want to get to that point today of showing you, of like, this isn't science versus God.
No.
It's like, no, they go together. Like you said, originally with the scientists, they were trying to show and prove like how God does things. That's why I look at, like, the Bible is not a science book, right?
No,
the Bible talks about who God is, what he did for us, but it's not a science book. That's why I look at it. Tells us what he did. He created, the heavens and the earth and all these things. But then I look at science then tells us, how he did it.
Right.
And that's where I think people just don't need to have that fear of like it's one or the other.
Science or God.
Exactly.
In fact, times when my faith has kind of been shaky, or you go through something hard,
absolutely.
or
There's
whatever.
seasons like that.
Honestly, science has rooted and confirmed me in weak times. So
that's awesome.
It's pretty amazing. I look forward to. We'll see where this conversation goes.
Being a high school teacher, obviously you're going to be confronted with some students that are going to be like, they know, because you've never been shy about who you are, so they know you have faith, but then they know that there's some sciences out there, and of course they've probably drawn the line. But like, just talking about the beginning of the universe, we talked about the Big Bang, and I remember going through school in Greenville Public Schools as well, and it seems that was it. Like, there was nothing else. There's no other evidence other than the Big Bang happened, and it was pure, just spontaneous combustion out of nowhere. And so if we can get into a little bit about the Big Bang, how is that even compatible with the Bible's account of creation?
That's a great question, because do you know when the Big Bang was first promoted as a scientific theory? It was in either 1922 or 1927. I can't remember. I don't have all my stats.
There's a lot of dates and times.
But when the Big Bang was first proposed, do you know who proposed it? A physicist who was also a Catholic priest.
Oh,
interesting.
And do you know what the scientific community's reception of that was? They rejected it.
Oh.
Do you know why? Because, most people don't realize this.
No, I'm like soaking it in.
At the time, physicists said they believed in the steady state model of the universe, which means the universe has been eternal. It's always been there. You see, if the universe had a beginning,
right,
and you're in the 1920s, as a physicist, you have a big problem.
Right.
What started it? Because we all know, logically and scientifically, anything that began to exist had a cause.
Yeah.
Right. And so when Fred Hoyle, I mentioned, I think in 1949, coined the term Big Bang, he was actually talking about, he didn't believe it, because he was a strict atheist. He's like, it was almost like he was saying, and you think everything came from just a Big Bang?
Right.
Like almost,
sarcasm.
It's almost like he was being sarcastic and mocking it. Now, 20 years later, he swore, I was not making fun of it.
Of course.
And so Einstein himself said, no way. He believed in the steady state universe until cosmic radiation, microwave radiation, persuaded him, the universe is expanding like this, and you extrapolate, I guess the universe did have a beginning. But he was resistant to it. Now it is, scientifically, we know. I don't think there's a physicist alive today that would say, no, the universe is eternal.
Right.
The fact that the universe began was back in the 1920s, and still is a huge evidence that we have in physics that God exists.
Which is interesting that you say that, because I feel like in my experience, whenever I hear the Big Bang, it's always the opposite. It's like, no, Big Bang, this proves evolution. This proves, like, I don't ever hear people talking about, the Big Bang does prove God exists, which I always say, like, I believe that, I do believe in the Big Bang, right? God said, let there be light, and bang, it happened, right? It's like,
he spoke it.
Exactly. But I feel like growing up, I always feel like when you hear the word Big Bang, it's never on the side of God. It's always on the side of evolution. Why is that?
It's painted that way. It's just taught that way and painted that way, and because they don't say that. They don't say what you just said. God spoke, and bang, it happened.
Yeah.
Okay. So they'll say, some gases or some hot gases exploded. Wait a minute, that doesn't talk about the beginning of the universe. What is the universe? The universe is all matter, including those gases you just talked about.
Yes,
So
exactly.
where did those come from?
Yeah, exactly.
Like how did, or
There's still
the
deeper
universe
questions every
was a
time.
compressed state.
Yeah.
How'd that happen?
Right. Yeah.
So really the Big Bang is a non-explainer unless you say, a whole bunch of nothing exploded and out came everything.
Right.
Now, if you think about it in those terms, do you really believe everything around us came from nothing?
Right.
Right.
Without a God.
Yeah.
You have to explain.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sorry, the burden of proof is on you
Yeah.
because, because if the universe is all matter, and matter can't cause itself, nothing causes itself.
Right, exactly.
That's a illogical thing. So something outside of the universe had to cause it.
Right. Yeah.
Name who has a resume like that?
Yeah. Exactly.
There's only one.
So I think there's a book Frank Turek maybe wrote that.
I was just gonna say,
I don't have enough faith to be
I love that title.
Right.
And it's like, I mean, you got to look at what is the argument, what are the arguments, and boy, the Big Bang has a lot to prove. Now they'll say, who created God? God is an uncreated cause. He's eternal. You have to have some, who created your hot gases? Same thing. You got to have something. There's got to be a beginning somewhere.
Yeah,
And,
absolutely.
Because I think that was one of the questions I had down here, because that's what you hear from atheists a lot is like, okay, well, you believe that I'm so crazy to believe that out of nothing, everything came into being. You say God created everything, but who created God?
Right.
That's a common question that people have, which is valid. So what's your answer to that then?
Well, if God is an eternal being by definition, then the question is kind of silly.
Right.
Who created God? Right. If we're talking about who created the universe, which was not eternal, or how did the universe, the non-eternal universe, come into being? What's your answer?
Right.
And now I need to make sure you understand. And so if anybody is wrestling with science who's listening to this, the Big Bang doesn't necessarily prove God's existence.
Right.
I'm just saying the Big Bang is not incompatible with God.
For sure.
Okay, there are other evidences. So that's not what I would call a positive evidence for God.
Right.
I'm just saying that the scientific reasoning and stuff that writes God out of the picture, the Big Bang is not sufficient to write him out of the picture.
Right, for sure.
He's still in the running. He still has a resume that fits the description of a universe creator.
Right.
And so is there positive evidence for God?
Right.
That would be a different question.
Yeah. No,
Yeah,
that's good.
absolutely.
What about another word that, when it comes to science, that Christians kind of freak out about is the word evolution, right?
Yeah,
it's like, because whenever we hear evolution, we think of just Darwin and we think of basically macroevolution.
Yeah.
So is there evidence that supports evolution, and does it line up with Christian theology, the view of God? Like, is there a type of evolution that, like, what is, because again, I think when we hear the word evolution,
Right.
everyone's always like, oh, we don't believe in that.
Right.
So talk a little bit about evolution.
Yeah, and I think, evolution, all right, here's the short answer. Does evolution happen? Of course. But
There's always a but.
in
There's
what
always a but.
way
Yeah, exactly.
does evolution happen, right? That's the key. And so I don't think evolution should be a word that causes me or anyone else to go, right? But we should look at, what does evolution do? What can it do and what can't it do? Okay? So let me give you an example. Many science textbooks use the example of malaria. Malaria, the parasite that causes malaria is P. falciparum or something. Okay, but we'll just call it the malaria parasite.
Yeah, that's very
for
easy
fun.
for me.
Okay,
I need that.
All right, we'll just call it the
Keep
malaria
simple,
parasite. So textbooks use this parasite as an example of evolution. And it is. It's a great example of evolution, of what evolution can do. But you know what? It's also a great example of what evolution cannot do. So let me give you an example. In the mid-1900s, maybe 1950-ish,
Okay.
chloroquine. Chloroquine was a drug used to treat malaria patients. Okay? And chloroquine was used in the, like I said, 1950s. But by the 1980s, chloroquine was not effective anymore. Why? Because the malaria parasite mutated and became resistant to the drug. And so similarly, we have antibiotic resistance and different things like that that we've heard about in the news. So how did that become resistant? Well, it evolved, okay? But in the last 15 to 20 to 25 years, we now have the technology to look at how did evolution happen at the DNA level, at the protein level. Like what mutated in this microscopic parasite. You want to hear about this? This is great.
Do tell.
Okay. DNA contains the instructions to build proteins. And we're made of proteins.
Right.
Everything, we're made of proteins. Okay. So, the parasites are made of proteins. There's a certain protein that's 424 building blocks long of amino acids. Imagine this. We'll keep it simple.
I'm going to need that.
Exactly.
400. Picture a Lego tower, 424 blocks tall. For the parasite to become immune to the drug chloroquine, at position 76, so the 76th block,
Lego, yes.
and the 220th block need to get substituted out. When that happens, the resulting parasite is immune. And then that parasite spreads through the, because that's the only one immune, and so it lives and has babies, whereas the other ones don't live and have babies, and so pretty soon, all the malaria parasites are immune. Okay? Now, how hard is it to get that mutation to happen? From the 1950s to 1980s, so it took 30-some years. How many people are infected on planet Earth at any one time? A couple of years ago, there was 263 million malaria patients.
Oh, wow.
Each patient has up to a trillion cells of the parasite in them.
Oh, wow.
That's crazy. And you look at year after year after year, you can add up how many parasites did it take to get the mutation to happen. You can just do the math. Maybe you can't do the math.
No, okay. I am looking for a
calculator right now.
And I want you to think about the number. The chances are 1 in 10 to the 20th.
Jeez.
And what that means is a 1 with 20 zeros after it.
Yeah.
That's how many parasites it took before the mutation happened.
Wow.
This is observational, real-world data. This is not hypothetical. It's not like, what can evolution do? That's what happened.
Yeah.
Now, that's how many organisms it took. And because the population, the number of parasites is so huge, it happened. Let's just picture a mutation twice as hard as that. Instead of 2 blocks, 4 blocks. Now, for a little bacteria to change into a human, in the course of human history, for a little bacteria to change into you and me throughout, let's give them 10 billion years.
Right.
Let's just say it's 10 billion years.
Right.
How many mutations had to happen? Okay. So let's just say, we'll consider one double mutation happening. Okay, double malaria mutation happening. Every year on planet Earth, there is 10 to the 30th new bacteria that form. That's a lot. 1 with 30 zeros after. For 10 billion years, you can do the math. What are the chances that one double malaria mutation happened in the entire 10 billion years of all the bacteria on planet Earth? The odds are slightly against even one of those mutations happening.
Jeez.
And we are told that a bacteria through 10 billion years changed into Homo sapiens.
Right.
Without even one of those mutations, you would have had to have millions of those mutations happening.
Wow.
Mathematically and scientifically, that kind of evolution is what I would call, and many scientists would call, scientifically unreasonable.
Right.
It's unreasonable to conclude that.
Right.
Could it happen? Well, I mean, I guess I could win the lottery every month for the next 20 years.
Right.
But it's not reasonable to expect that.
No.
Sure. And so mathematically and scientifically, we now have the technology to look at these mutations and what exactly is going on and go, it doesn't work. The theory is a theory in crisis, and more biologists are recognizing that it's in crisis. So yes, can little changes happen? Absolutely. Can finches with bird beaks change their shape? Of course. But is it scientifically and mathematically possible for a bird's descendants to become a horse?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's not mathematically, and it's not my faith. It's not just because, well, I read Genesis and so I don't believe that.
Right.
It's the numbers.
Yeah.
They don't work.
Right.
For a science and math guy, I don't have it's not reasonable for me to assume that.
And that's that macro evolution that like a lot of
Exactly.
atheists believe is like, yeah, a bird can become a horse.
Right.
And it's like, no, we don't believe in that, but there are that micro evolution like you're talking about that we do agree with, and there's nothing wrong with that. So the word evolution itself is not something to be afraid of. It's just, what do you mean by when you say evolution?
That's important.
That's the important part of that. So no, that's interesting. Like my head is like,
oh, I know.
I was like,
okay.
I didn't even like.
You said Lego, so I was right in on it. So that was good.
I wanted to give you enough
it's
detail.
But
so
if you
good.
think about that, so we talk about that super, super small level of just like evolution. But even if you look at DNA in itself, that's a strong evidence of God being in existence. Like just us. You were talking about that earlier.
Well, because see, if you just say, hey, the Big Bang doesn't write God out of the picture, and if you say, oh, evolution, that doesn't write God out of the picture, you're not therefore justified as Christians. We're not justified to therefore say God, right?
Right.
You see the logical problem with that.
Yeah.
And an atheist would be correct to point that out. If we're like, well, there's a problem with evolution, therefore God did it.
Right.
Well, that's not really sound reasoning
No,
either.
not at all.
So what do we see when we look at nature? When we look at, you mentioned DNA, okay? And this, I'll try to keep it simple here.
Use
but
Legos again.
let's say you're walking on the beach and you come upon there's rocks and seashells all over the place in the sand and stuff. And let's say you come upon maybe 50 rocks and seashells arranged in a perfect heart shape in the sand. What do you conclude?
Somebody loves their girlfriend.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, all right. Somebody did that, and you can even conclude.
Yes.
Like, oh, there's love involved.
There's love in the air.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. So you conclude that. That's a reasonable conclusion. Now, you don't conclude, well, the tide sure was interesting today.
Right.
Right. You don't conclude that. And why do you conclude that? Well, there's scientific information. Science tells us why. When we see a pattern, but not just an improbable pattern. Yeah, a heart is improbable, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Improbable. But it's improbable, but it also does something. It's a shape or a pattern that communicates.
Communicates something.
Right. Yeah.
Anytime we see those two things together, we call that information.
Mm-hmm.
Right? High improbability, like a heart, but it also communicates something.
Love in the air.
Yeah.
Right? You're hiking through the mountains, and you come upon that famous mountain with all the presidents' faces.
Yeah. Right.
Right? Mount Rushmore, right?
Oh yeah.
You don't
Look
go,
at
wow.
the randomness of
Yeah,
that.
exactly.
Yeah, erosion
Yeah.
sure is weird
Yeah,
around
it's
here.
crazy.
No, nobody does that. We know people did that, okay?
Yeah.
Why? Not just because it's a weird shape or an improbable shape, but it like communicates specific faces to
Right.
us.
Yeah,
For
yeah.
sure.
And right now in New Mexico and California, there's radar dishes pointed up. The Allen Telescope Array in California is pointed up to the sky, huge radar dishes. And they're listening. It's called the SETI Project, the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence.
No.
Oh, yeah.
And what are they listening for? They're looking for any kinds of waves, radiation from space, that has two characteristics. An improbable pattern that is trying to communicate something. They're looking for that.
Mhm.
Because they know if they detect those two things, they will have detected intelligent life.
Right.
Understand?
Yep,
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
every time we come across a pattern that's trying to communicate something, we know a mind is behind it.
Yeah.
And any honest person in charge of those satellite dishes will tell you that.
Right.
Mhm.
Okay, DNA. What in the world is it? Well, it was discovered in the 1950s by Watson and Crick. Took decades and decades to really discover what it is. Do you know what it is? It is encoded information.
Hmm.
Oh my.
Yeah.
You know computer code is ones and zeros, right?
Yeah.
We call ones and zeros, there's two numbers, 1 and 0.
That makes
Yeah.
sense.
We call that binary,
Right.
bi for 2. Do you know DNA is quaternary?
Hmm.
Okay. And each cell has about 6 feet of DNA in it if you unwound it. And we have like 30 to 40 trillion cells. If you took
Jeez.
all of our DNA, it would go to the sun and back 200 times.
That's
Okay.
insane.
Just one person's.
That's insane.
Okay. And it is Bill Gates founder of Microsoft, said this about DNA. DNA is so complex. It is like a software program, but it is more complex than any software program ever written. Improbable pattern, check.
Right.
But more important than an improbable pattern, it's communicating. It's got instructions for building a whole person or a whole organism. Anywhere else where you have information, you have a book, you have an author. You have music, you have a composer.
Right.
You have a heart on the beach.
Yeah.
You go, somebody did that.
Right.
Faces on the mountain. We say wherever information is, intelligent mind had to put that information there. Information doesn't come from randomness. Where does the information in DNA come from? You have two choices.
Right.
Randomness or a mind, an architect.
Right.
So if you want to go with randomness, then you're the guy on the beach that sees the heart in the sand and goes, wow, weird.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Weird chance.
Yeah.
You're the guy that hiking comes upon Mount Rushmore and goes, wow, erosion.
Yeah.
You're the guy operating the SETI dishes that goes, yeah, well, this sure looks like information, but no, I don't believe in intelligent. You'd have to be biased against intelligent life in the universe. Okay? So that now is different from the Big Bang and evolution discussion. That information in DNA is positive evidence to say, ooh, this is evidence for a creator.
Right.
You see the Big Bang? The Big Bang, I was very careful. It doesn't write God out of the picture.
Right.
Evolution failing, we need something to take its place.
Right.
Well, the DNA evidence gives us evidence that God should take the place of randomness in the creation discussion.
Yeah. And that's just crazy. When you dive deep into DNA and all that's just your body in general, just the intricacies of how you look at your eye or just things like that. It's insane to me to act like that just happened by chance.
But you got to get it, and the listeners have to get it. It's not. We're not only saying, oh, wow, it's too complex. It must be God. We're saying no, complexity. Okay. We're saying information.
Yeah.
There's a communication going on.
Mm-hmm.
And if there's information,
there's got to be a mind behind it.
There's got to be a mind behind it. And that's huge.
Yeah.
See, that's just mind-blowing because it can be as small as DNA, but that's, like, he's in all of them, the details that blow my mind. But even if you look at just, like, the earth in general, where it lays and everything in the universe, like...
No, okay, if we looked at DNA and we decoded it, and if you had a powerful microscope and you looked at DNA and saw English sentences, first put this chemical here and this chemical here, English sentences for building a body.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
What would you conclude?
A person.
I mean, seriously, you microscopic and you're like, English sentences with commas and punctuation, you'd be a...
Someone wrote
Someone
this.
did that.
Somebody, whoa.
For sure.
You'd be like a superhuman created humans or something, and he spoke English.
Right. Yeah.
I'm telling you, it's not binary, it's quaternary, it's a digital, it's more complex than English sentences that we're looking at.
Yeah.
That's nuts.
Crazy. I don't know, it's mind blown. Well, a couple more questions here.
Yeah.
One that I had is when you talk to atheists, obviously I'm sure you've had plenty of conversations in your days with atheists, what are some of the main arguments that they use to support their views that there is no God? I gotta believe, is there a certain go-to that every atheist is
that's a good question.
Is this is the one that proves I'm right, or is it just kind of a lot of different things? I guess in your experience, is there a go-to for them?
Now, you would have to talk to a college professor, or you would have to talk to a very, very studied atheist. Your average atheist, I'm not trying to be insulting, okay? But your average atheist just doesn't have great reasons to believe what they believe.
Right.
They really, I'm sorry, but there isn't a go-to argument.
Right.
I was talking to an atheist on a local college campus a little over a year ago. And I said, well, why are you an atheist? He said, I was just raised that way. And I said, well, that's a terrible reason to be an atheist.
Right.
I said, that's not a great reason to be a Christian either.
Right.
Just raised that way.
Yeah.
You need to be convinced.
Right. Yeah.
I said, so come on, convince me.
Yeah.
So the most they can do, it's kind of sad. The most they can do is kind of like we were talking, they can kind of repeat phrases they've heard from their professors.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, I'm an atheist because of the Big Bang.
Right.
But they don't even know, okay, what caused the Big Bang? Seriously, just, okay. I don't really know.
Right.
Or evolution. And simply asking, okay, can you give me an example of evolution? No, and then they start reaching.
Yep,
See,
just something.
you can watch them mentally. They're wasn't there like a malaria?
Yeah, right.
Something.
Right.
So I'm sure. Yes. Yeah. You read. Which I've read. I've read my competition.
Right.
You read in Richard Dawkins in The God Delusion. I mean, I hate to break it to you, but you talk about evolution, right? And we're assuming already that life exists. We haven't even asked the question. Ask the evolutionists. How did the first cell become alive?
Mm-hmm.
How do you go from inanimate to animate?
Right.
They don't have anything.
Right.
They've been trying to do it in a lab. They don't have any good reason for it. Do you know what Richard Dawkins writes in The God Delusion? I mean, I'm not straw manning here. I wish I was. He says, well, it is highly improbable, but it only had to happen once.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's what we're going to go with.
Well, yeah. I've even heard that atheists that we don't believe in miracles. Well, except for one.
There's one
There's one in the beginning. We believe in that miracle. But outside of that, we don't believe in miracles and supernatural things. And that's kind of that. Goes along with that.
I mean, the law of conservation of matter and energy. Matter can't be created or destroyed. Well, okay.
Right.
Yeah. So I wish there was, here's what they say.
So in your experience, there isn't that one go-to, this is why we believe what we believe.
Other than what I've said, because of, evolution, but a simple question, okay, can you tell me how you came to this conclusion? Or how you,
They seem to stay away from science. It's more theology. It's just this normal questions that we get. It seems to be most atheists will be well, how can a good God let bad things happen?
Yeah,
it seems more theology-based.
It's more attacking,
philosophy.
Yeah.
That's getting into philosophy, and that's probably one of the main arguments.
For sure.
Which that's fun to talk about too. But
absolutely.
This conversation.
Gotcha. What's so as we get ready to wrap up here, if you yourself could give one argument to somebody, you're like, hey, I'm struggling. I don't know if God's real. What's your go-to? If I could give you one argument to show why I believe that there is a God, what would it be for you?
Honestly, we probably already discussed it. Probably the DNA.
The DNA.
I mean, it's easy to understand, right? Hearts on a beach. Mm-hmm. It's a little hard to understand because we don't speak DNA code.
Right.
We speak English. So if it was English there, that is positive evidence that the blueprints, the instructions for life, were written by a mind. There's a great book written by Stephen Meyer called, he calls it The Signature in the Cell. How every cell has God's signature written on it because of that. And that is positive evidence that needs to be reckoned with. It's better than saying, if he was stuck on evolution, of course I'd share with them what I know about evolution. We could even talk about the malaria or you can go into tons of other examples. But that just shoots down evolution. The DNA rises God to the forefront of the argument right there. So
I think that's good.
That's what I would go with.
The two that the most common that I would say that scientists would say are the best evidence is the DNA, and then like I was saying earlier, that the law of fine tuning.
Yes.
Right? Because I know.
Do we have time to go into that briefly?
Well, let's go. A brief summary of just kind of so people understand what it is. But like Christopher Hitchens, we were talking about, who's debated many Christians. Even in a conversation I was listening to him, he talked about how he's like, man, I think that the law of fine tuning is probably the creationist's best argument because it's crazy. So why don't you just give a brief, just a basic summary of what does that even mean? What is the law of fine tuning?
Yeah, that probably is the best argument. It's just harder to understand.
Yeah.
So this will be harder to understand for the listeners. But there are fundamental properties about the universe. Gravity, right? How gravity attracts things. Electricity, electrical charges, how they attract magnetism, how they attract the nuclear force in the nucleus. So there's all these characteristics. There's 20 or 30 of them that are very, very, and this is what the fine tuning is. They have to be just correct amounts. So for example, if there was a list of numbers, picture a tape measure. that stretches across the entire known universe. The entire known universe. These values have to be correct within about an inch.
Which is insane.
And they can't
think
come
of that,
outside
the
of that.
vastness of everything.
Right? And I'm not just saying just for life to occur. I'm saying for the formation of an atom to happen. So there can be nothing without all these attractive forces being just right. And one doesn't determine the other. So they are all independently fine-tuned.
Think about that.
Yeah.
And so, if you come across something like that, the universe is rigged. Essentially, that's what you come. It is like if I won the lottery today, you'd be like, oh wow, you're lucky.
Congratulations.
But if I won it next week and the week after and the week after, pretty soon you say this is rigged.
Right now.
Something's up.
Yeah.
And so the universe, similarly, every single thing with the precision, it shows that the universe is rigged. Again, that is a positive evidence for a mind having done it.
Yeah, and that's why someone like Christopher Hitchens talking about how that's a tough argument to go against, because it is. I mean, even if you look at Earth and the distance from the sun, I mean, it's like if it's even a little closer, it's too hot. If it's a little further back, it's too cold. Like we can't survive. So, but when you look at the intricacies of that, and when I encourage people, go look that up, because there's so much.
Don't be afraid of it.
It'll blow your mind.
And those are things like distance from the sun that's necessary for life to exist.
Yeah.
We're talking there's constants necessary for even atoms to
Exactly. It's crazy. So this is just, it's just, I don't know what to say, like some of the stuff. I'm like, my mind just blown. That's all I can say.
In your face.
I'm just like, I don't even know, I can't even add anything to it.
Well, it's
just crazy.
good if you just realize, man, there is excellent reason.
Totally.
Yeah,
There's
this should be
reasons to
encouraging.
believe that there is a God.
Yeah, and that's what I would say. I guess in wrapping up here, what would be your advice to someone who's maybe listening, who is struggling with, maybe they're at college right now and they have a professor telling them that there is no God, there is no, like, what would be your advice to them in dealing with that and to strengthen their faith? Yeah,
I think you should. Check out the soundness of these arguments. First of all, you can look up a book. Again, Stephen Meyer has a great book called The Return of the God Hypothesis, where fine-tuning DNA and I believe the Big Bang is discussed, as well as the history of science. Amazing book. Michael Behe has a really good book called The Edge of Evolution, which talks about what can evolution do and what it can't do. What is the edge? What is the max that we can expect? He goes into all the details. So if you want some details, those are some good resources to check out. But there's pretty sound reasons to believe that there is indeed a God.
Right.
And it is hard though when all your professors are saying this and this. But I guess don't worry about your professors. Talk to the average Joe Schmo. Ask your students in class, see what they think, and really understand why they believe what they believe. Most atheists don't have great reasons.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's awesome. Well, listen, Jason, I appreciate you coming and joining us. This is a lot of fun, very educational. Yeah. So this was awesome. Well, hopefully you guys enjoyed this episode. I encourage you to share it with maybe friends and family who would find this fascinating. But just so much good stuff here. But we appreciate you guys tuning in. So we will see you on the next one.